Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the distinction that I was talking about earlier about warts. What are warts? It sounds horrible, but warts in a relationship can be something that is like your flaws, right? So we all have our own. I call them warts. I know it's not the best word, but so we all have our own individual. It's called our flaws, but sometimes, like in the beginning of the relationship, we love those quirky things about each other. We think that they're cute and we're attracted to them. And then over time, those warts, and I'll give you some example of what they can be, but become aggravating and frustrating and, turn people off. And then there are the warts of the relationship, the flaws that the relationship carries. And those are the things that kind of get in the way because people expect them to all of a sudden suddenly be gone. So say like you had a religious upbringing, or you were brought up in a different culture and it is embedded, it's part of your fabric, and it's not something that you really want to get rid of, but your partner doesn't really understand it all the way. And you try to mesh that with what their warts are, what their flaws are, or their intricacies are, because it doesn't necessarily have to be flaws, but you need to figure out, like, how do we integrate these? How do you embrace each other's warts rather than rejecting or shaming each other for those warts? So I called it, licking each other's wounds instead of pouring salt in each other's wounds, which is not what we usually do, right? We find something wrong with our partner, and yeah, you're just like your mother, rather than it just being a part of who they are and learning how to dance with those things. So when you can learn to have a relationship with each other's warts, and that means that you are able to sit down with each other and say, these are the quirky parts of me. These are the parts of me that I probably won't ever change, even if it frustrates you. And I would love your support and in being embraced in that rather than feeling rejected by that. So let me give you an example. When I was young, and I hate to age myself, but in the 70s, the movie Jaws came out. Scared the shit out of me because I was a swimmer, and I would picture Jaws coming through the drain, I would picture Jaws coming through the toilet, I'd picture Jaws literally coming through everything. And I don't know if you know this feeling, but when you're little and the lights are out and you put your foot on the ground out of your bed, you feel like somebody's gonna grab you, right? Like you put your foot down and you pull it back up because you don't want to be grabbed. In my mind, there were sharks in the carpet. I call them carpet sharks. My kids know it. I've given this neurotic vision to them too, because when the lights go out, I run for it, right? Literally, like I will leap from the doorway to my bed because I don't want the carpet sharks. And I know how unreasonable that sounds. I know how silly it is. It's just a quirk. And I am 52 years old. And in my mind, when the lights go out, I still hear dun, 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 dun. Like I still hear those fucking sharks. That's just the way it is. Makes for a weird first date, by the way, let me tell you, because then there's this weird, like, why are you leaping from the... Anyway, whole different thing. But it's just not something that's gonna go away. And when I'm in a relationship with somebody and they accept the fact that there are carpet sharks, instead of getting annoyed or making fun of me for it, they'll step in front of me and they'll turn the light on. That's super sexy, right? That is embracing somebody's quirks, embracing somebody's warts, rather than shaming them. So think about the things about you that you try to justify or ignore or simplify or feel ashamed about, right? That you would really love to have embraced, because there's nothing sexier, at least in my mind, than somebody knowing me well enough to turn the lights on before the music starts. Right? That's embracing each other's warts. Okay, so now you guys have learned how to clean the pee out of your bathwater. You've really embraced each other's warts. You've had the ability to communicate your needs specifically and find out what your partner's needs are. What is the next step? Now the next step is the fun part. The next step is the exploring part. I want to remind you, in the beginning I talked about the difference between love and romance. So we're going to take the love piece and we're going to put it over here for a minute, and we're going to talk about what happens when it's just the passionate side. So if we were just about bringing love, because I'm not saying that there's not love in sex and romance and in passion, but they often have different, they wear different hats. So if you can picture that, when you are in that space of love and passion, or just passion and romance, you get to be, and I say be, like be in a different space. You don't have to be the mom, you don't have to be the dad, you don't have to be the employee or the caretaker. This is where you get to be in whatever the fantasy is that you're excited about doing. Because that's actually what desire is, right? It's the longing, the panging for, that includes imagination. So if you can think about the things that you are really excited about, aside from the other stuff, the stressors of the day and all of that, what are the things that really excite and turn you on? So there are 1,000 things that you can do. People are uncomfortable often talking about the things that they want to try because they don't want to shock their partner or sound too boring or aggressive. But this is the place where you get to act out and be anything. You get to dominate, or you get to be childish, or you get to be unreasonable, or you get to be vulgar, or you get to be dirty, or you get to be sweet, or whatever the roles are that you want to be in this space of passion and sex and desire. It should feel like there are no judgments, there are no boundaries. Now I say boundaries, but they have to be agreed upon, right? So the things that you want may be different than the things that your partner wants. But it's important for you guys to talk about. So this is where you get to come up with some really, really fun things to do. So if you're not sure about it or you feel awkward, let me give you some ideas. So I would go to Target, go to Walmart, wherever you can find, the game Jenga. I have 1,000 of them, but not in the office here, but I have 1,000 of them. So split up the Jenga, get 2 Sharpies, and write the things like a sentence, like, I wish you would, I love it when you, we should try. And when you pull the Jenga out, you have to answer the question. We should try whatever it is that you guys want to try, right? I want you to know, though, you may get the one that you're afraid to answer, so be careful about what you write. There are different ways to explore the things that you might want to try. It could be something playful, and the reason why, by the way, I use Jenga or a game is because it's less threatening. It's sometimes very awkward, especially with it's like a car conversation. So, what do you fantasize about? It's a very awkward conversation for some couples. So, whatever it is that you can do to make it fun, I have couples that take a fishbowl, and I say, I want you to fill it with 20 things each. And then I want you to pull it out each week. One of you will take 1 week, one of you will take the next week, things that you guys want to try. And when you're in that space, and I want to remind you that what I said was it's a thing that you be, it's not a thing that you totally do. So even though you're doing like, oh, I want to dress up like a nurse, it's still a space that you let yourself be in, right? That vulnerable space. So I want you to really let yourself be very playful with this. There are 1,000 different things. Like I said, there's Jenga and there's a fishbowl. But the idea is the next step is to start exploring those things that you may really want to try. And by the way, it doesn't have to be like hanging from the ceiling. It could literally be staying in bed for the afternoon and watching, soap operas together, and then letting it lead to whatever. Here's what I do want you to know also, though. We love the idea of spontaneity. It sounds so sexy. But the truth is that sex and passion in a long-term relationship is intentional. It's not something that's unintentional. So sometimes it has to be something that's really thought about. It's an intentional process that you're going to go through. So is it really fun to go to a concert and, go to the bathroom and have sex, in the middle of wherever you are? Absolutely. That's totally fun. But when you are going through years together or months together and, you want it always to be like it's going to just drop from the sky and be this magical thing that happens while you're folding laundry, it just doesn't happen that way. So that part of the relationship has to be really, really intentional, which means that in your space, in your bedroom, it needs to be your place. Like that boundary has to be set from the rest of the world. So maybe it's that you say, we don't ever talk about the kids in our bedroom. If we're going to talk about the kids, let's go sit in the kitchen. We don't talk about our bills. We don't talk about our asshole boss. We don't talk about anything that would disrespect that space, right? No pictures of the kids on the wall, no pictures of your parents on the wall. There has to be an intentional idea of what that space is going to be like. I've had couples that I have Skype or Zoom so that they can show me what their space looks like, and it absolutely makes a difference. And it's something that you need to do together. You know, just because one of you is better at decorating doesn't mean the other partner doesn't have an idea of what a sexy space would feel like. So you want to really create that inviting spot that you guys can go that feels very intentional. And again, I love the idea of, spontaneous sex, but I want you to know that with a long-term relationship, and even a short-term, that connection needs to be something that's really, truly intentional. Okay, so what happens when you're in a really long-term relationship? Is it that the flame should always be up and hot? No, the reality is that, a passionate, loving relationship absolutely has its highs and lows, it ebbs and flows. There's no question about it. So allowing it to be in the space that it's in without it making it mean something like, oh my God, we haven't done this and we haven't played Jenga and we haven't, is sometimes really important, because when you force it becomes inauthentic. So as the years go by, things happen, right? People get sick, you lose your job, something exciting happens, you get to travel for a month, whatever it is. The relationship and the intimacy absolutely hits its highs and lows. What I can tell you is that relationships for couples who have had deep intimacy and passion for years and years and years have the ability to reconnect and find each other. And it doesn't have to be in the same way. It can be an awareness of the need to connect that deeply, right? So you feel safe in the relationship, years have gone by, but it's important to pay attention to that something feels a little off, and being able to reach out to your partner and taking the initiative, by the way, not just expecting them to do it, because there's a lot of like, you haven't brought me flowers and me, none of that. It's more like, wow, I'm feeling this void. What do I need to do? Who do I need to be to re-invite my partner to come back in so that we can reconnect and go through those ebbs and flows? And age doesn't have anything to do with it. I'm just going to tell you, age has a lot to do with how your body reacts. You get older, your hips and lubrication changes and erections change and all of that stuff changes. Body image changes, but desire never changes. That's hard to imagine when you have like an 89-year-old grandfather, or grandmother. It's really, really hard. That's why Betty White, we love Betty White so much, right? Because we don't expect her to talk about sex and intimacy the way she does, but that's very real, and it's actually why we love her so much, because it feels so authentic. So when you're growing old with somebody, when you've been together for a really long time, allowing that relationship to kind of have its process, it's almost like trust the process, but also taking the initiative, being responsible for driving it, and allowing your partner to be responsible when they have the strength, right? Because sometimes we have strength at different times. Sometimes we have energy at different times. And accommodating for those changes instead of berating each other. So, when a woman gets older or she goes through menopause and she doesn't lubricate the same way, oftentimes a man will be like, oh, you're not excited by me. Or if his erection, oh, you're not excited. But that's just not it. So some of that is staying informed and being able to work with it. Again, that's the words, right? Because they change through the years, instead of punishing it, right? Because imagine how humiliating it is for both as life changes and bodies change and moods change and things change. So the idea here is allowing for those changes and feeling comfortable that you can change together with it.